Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you to the second panel of the day, Best Client Acquisition Tactics in Asia. I can hardly think of a less relevant issue. We're going to tackle this fascinating issue from a few different perspectives. I will allow Avi Mizrahi, our managing editor of Forex Magnates, to introduce the panel and then allow the speakers introduce themselves. I will advise those who are now entering to take their seats as we would like to begin, and we will also give 10-minute break at the end for a Q&A from you. Enjoy.
Thank you very much, Erez. So I think this panel touches the very heart of why we're all here, which is how to get more business in Asia. So we have a very knowledgeable panel, and you're going to have a great discussion. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Sandy Jadeja, the Chief Market Strategist for VIBS Financial.
Hi, everyone. My name's Paul Derham, and I'm one of the partners of a law firm in Australia called Holly Nethercoat Lawyers.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tal Ron, Tal Yitzhak Ron. I'm chairman of Tal Ron Driem & Co. We're a law firm based in Tel Aviv with representative office outside of Israel as well. Thank you.
Hi all, my name is Eyal Rosenblum. I'm CEO of Tech Financials. We provide mainly binary and exotic options technologies to a lot of firms in Asia, specifically Japan and China. So I'm here to answer questions.
Hi everyone, I'm Ran Cohen. I'm the CEO of Traders Education. We provide an all-in-one education solution for brokers, Forex, binaries around the world. Thank you.
Great. So we'll start with the most broad question, which is, what do you see as the main difference between working in Asia compared to other parts of the world?
For the last 6 years, working with two major brokerage companies, which we were UK-based, a lot of people wanted to come into Southeast Asia, mainland Asia, to obviously work with clients in a growing economy. But the difference between the Western world and the Eastern world is understanding the cultural differences, but also understanding how not just to establish a business, but also how, very importantly, to build a relationship with the client. There are, of course, legal aspects that you need to understand. There are marketing aspects that you need to understand. But one of the key points that I would put forward is that it's very, very important to have local offices across the regions.
I think the distinction between East and West is less relevant now, and I think there's more of a distinction between developed regulatory environments and soft regulatory environments. So, for example, Hong Kong is considered, and Japan are considered highly developed, even though they're the East, technically. And so from a lawyer's perspective, we see the need for brokers to have legal advice in any Asian country that they want to get into now, and this is tightening up. If they want to get into Asia through Australia, this is tightening up dramatically, and so I'll talk about that later if we get time. But I think that's probably the key distinction. So you've got soft targets, and Tal's an expert in many countries where there's it's difficult to navigate those laws, and then you've got the FCA and ASIC in Australia, where it's sort of clear cut, but it's more difficult to get in. So I think that's the main distinction. And with the Pepperstone issue that happened in the news a while ago, sort of late last year, that sort of highlighted a local regulator cracking down on an Australian business's activities in parts of Asia. And so we can talk about that later.
Well, I see two major differences and two major points that I would like to consider when we speak about the Asian market, if we compare it to North America or Western Europe. So one is here in Asia, I see a larger percentage of entities working through IBs, through introducing brokers with local presence that train staff that do education for Forex, and very interesting, have very strong relations with the local communities, which I don't see as far as influential in places like United Kingdom. And the second, as my friend Paul here said, my colleague, if we see Asia, we can see like places like Japan, where you have the JFSC, which is very strong, and the other places in Asia where it's a very soft type of regulation, if this regulation exists or enforced at all. And when we see Asia, if we compare Asia to Europe, the regulation or the lack of regulation or the gray type of regulation differs widely between these two jurisdictions. I think that we will touch it more later here in this panel.
Well, to answer the question from technology perspective, I would divide it to 3 different regions or markets in Asia. The one is Japan, the other one is China, and the rest of Asia. The rest of Asia is pretty much like any Western country. Japan, specifically because of regulation, enforces different types of binary options which are more complicated, which is similar to the US type of binary options, the ladder options. And this requires, of course, a different pricing technology to be able to price effectively. Ladder options requires more sophisticated pricing systems and requires adjustment to the Japanese regulator. Of course, there are lots of brokers that work in Japan unregulated, so they have the advantage of offering the simpler products, which is the simple high-low product for 60 seconds, something that is not allowed in the Japanese regulation, but it's an advantage if you work unregulated. If you work regulated, of course, then you have the advantage of being regulated, but the disadvantage of offering a more difficult product to sell. As for the Chinese market has to face different, let's say, difficulties or I would say that, first of all, in terms of regulation, it's still on the gray zone. So so it's not my point right now. But in terms of technology, so we're talking about both the need to provide a good enough speed and performance to different parts in China, which is something that is not easy to do, and you have to have strong technology to back this up, and also in terms of the products you offer, because as some of you may know, binary options is not a unified product like Forex is. Okay, there are lots of sub products, there are a lot of types of binary options, touch options, boundary, range. So with that respect, the Chinese market is very different from any other market I know. The Chinese traders are more sophisticated. They will identify any mispricing that the system does and will take advantage immediately. So you have to use a very strong technology that ensures that pricing works perfectly. Risk management is can deal with any mispricing and with any exposure to one side or another. And I can tell you for sure that the Chinese, no other trader is like a Chinese trader. They will identify weaknesses and they will take advantage of it very, very quickly. That's the main point.
Okay, hello. In terms of marketing point of view, as Eyal said, I think I would add Australia, which is a distinguished part in the Asian Pacific, and we can see in marketing-wise that there are different approaches that are right for Australian clients, Chinese, Japanese clients. Definitely those are the 3 big regions and tradable regions that we see. From marketing point of view, we see that education in those parts of the world is very, very demanded. People wants to learn all the time, wants to continue learning and improving their skills. It's something that is embedded in them. And also, I think in the society they live in, it's very encouraging to know more. Not like maybe the European broker that will give you the basic education. Here, they really want to learn, and as much as they can. We see that the localization of each region is very important. Chinese want to learn, of course, in Chinese, but also with their own symbols, with their own, with their own images that they can relate. The same as Australia. The Australian wants their own accent, they want their own examples. So we see that these type of countries are pushing a harder and harder education, and this is one of the best way to generate clients in the end.
I see. So a few people touched upon regulation. So I want to ask a practical question. From an international broker comes to you and asks, I want to open my business up to China. Where should I get my regulation, if any?
Up until this month, I think one of the most popular jurisdictions were Australia, New Zealand. Australia is still popular, I'm sure that Paul will tell us about. But New Zealand, I think that last year we sold about 30 different companies, New Zealand companies, $6,000, and you have a New Zealand company with regulation. I say regulation with quotation. But it's not real regulation, but it's New Zealand. It was very, very handy because you would open a company in New Zealand. You would need to set up a dispute resolution scheme. So if you have problems with your clients, you can do it and negotiate it and close this issue, and it was very popular. But what happened is in 2014, many of those brokers, so-called online brokers, were deregistered by the authorities there. And what is happening now, because you need actual physical presence in New Zealand, and this thing is very, very now checked and scrutinized by the authorities. Virtually, we don't see people now in 2015 even going to New Zealand for catering for Asia. So what people do is either, if they have the money, the funds, and the experience, if they want to cater for the Japanese market, they can go on the JFSA license, which is not cheap, but it gives you and gives the traders a big comfort that they are dealing with a trusted entity, trusted by the regulators. In China, it's a bit more of a gray market, and there is no yes or no question. So we see brokers either going as IBs or opening their own brands. If they open their own brands, either they go on regulation like ASIC in Australia, or they go on the FCA, which is more expensive, or Cypret, the Cypret regulation, the CISIC, which is easily passportable, but it's not something which is focused on Asia, or they do on non-regulated environments. Now even here, there is changes in trends. Like in recent years, up to 2 or 3 years ago, all of the Asian binary option brokers and forex brokers went on the structure of getting a BVI company. Now today, if you just get into the BVI registry, if you type BVI binary option warning notice in Google, you'll easily see a list of tens of binary options who are banned by the BVI registry, and some of them are enforced and some of them are prosecuted. So BVI is also not a place to go. So people go to other places now in these days, to the Eastern Caribbean. So people go to British Anguilla, St. Vincent. These are the places to go now because at the moment, these are less regulated or lightly regulated. So if you build the right structure with the right articles of association, memorandum of understanding, you might use these structures for catering for Asian clients if you don't want to go on the regulated.
I would like to add something regarding the Japanese and Chinese markets. As if the question is, what would Western brokers do if they want to come into China or Japan, then if they want to come to Japan regulated, then yes, they definitely need, the only way they can do it regulated is just go for the JFSA, which is almost impossible for a foreigner to do, for a non-Japanese to do. So, so the proper way would be either to purchase a low activity company that has a license that is valid. And it's also a big question because small companies that don't have enough volumes are having their license suspended, and it's very difficult to get it reactivated. So you know, getting into Japanese market as a Western broker is a tough task. Again, if you have the funds, if you have the right connections, then you can find the local small Japanese brokers and just acquire it. Which and there are quite a few on the shelf. So this is one option. Regarding the Chinese market, yes, it's still on a gray zone. But from my experience, in order to be more accepted in China as general, not from the authorities' point of view, but from the traders' point of view, it's better if you're regulated somewhere, and it's better if the regulation is something that is, you know, not a, what kind of offshore regulations do they have today for $5,000?
You can do in Belize if you
Yeah.
want. Yeah, but it's not 5,000, it's a bit more.
But if you have a...
But Bank the Binary have in Belize, and Bank the Binary is quite successful, but they do have
Yeah.
a SISEC license since 2013, and also a Belize one.
But if you have a UK license or an EU license and you publish it in and you work in China, then they will respect you more. But it's not, it doesn't make it fully legal.
We have a lot of clients telling us that they are focusing on the Chinese market. And I think a few years ago, Australia was known as a regulatory soft target. Get a license in Australia and then target exclusively the Chinese market. The Australian regulator now is saying, we want to see all Australian businesses targeting Australian clients. If they target clients overseas, whether in mainland China, Japan, or elsewhere, they need to be able to defend that and have some legal basis for how they are meeting those local laws. Otherwise, the Australian regulator is claiming that the Australian broker is providing its services unfairly, which is a legal requirement that they provide their services fairly. And so to counter that, at the moment we are crowdfunding legal advice from a whole bunch of jurisdictions where the client, the financial services law firm in Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore, Indonesia, mainland China, they will give us the legal advice, and then whoever's pitched in to pay for it will give a copy to them, so that if the ASIC regulator says, please explain to us why you have clients in that jurisdiction, our clients can then turn around and say, we've done our due diligence, we're within the boundaries of the marketing restrictions that are allowed. The reality is you can't do a lot without a license in a lot of those jurisdictions, but if you want to run a fully licensed business through Australia into Asia, you basically have to have some defence to why you have accounts in each of those jurisdictions. So if anyone wants to be in on that, that crowd-funded advice, then they can talk to us. We're just using sort of specialist lawyers in those jurisdictions, which is part of our network. And so we're seeing that happen. And the other thing we're seeing happen is the Australian regulator, the commissioner of the Australian regulator, it's also the chairman of IOSCO, which is the organisation where most of the securities commissions get together and they talk about global regulation. They're all trying to reduce what they call regulatory arbitrage. That's why New Zealand now has the same net tangible asset requirement as Australia, similar to Singapore, similar to the FCA. So they're trying to make it an equal playing field, and I think that's going to continue to spread. And so for businesses that can't afford net tangible asset requirements, if they want to go through one of those highly regulated jurisdictions, they would need to do it as an introducing broker until they have the capital requirements to basically be a market maker and do it that way. So it can be done, but it's a bit difficult. As we all know, in China, you've got I guess, federal laws that say one thing, and then you've got regular enforcement at a provincial level and even at a city level. And so getting a straight legal advice about what you can and can't do is very difficult, and it's only part of the equation, we're told by clients. And so that is still a question mark. And I don't think the non-Chinese regulators like ASIC and other regulators, I don't think they really know what you can and can't do either. And so it's quite difficult, but you need to show, if you are going through Australia into China, you need to show that A, you've got Australian clients, B, that you've got some legal understanding of what you can and can't do, and C, Australia, the third thing which I haven't mentioned is that the regulator in Australia and some of the other regulators as well want you to be only targeting clients that understand trading, not clients that are really desperate for cash flow, and those kind of clients. From a regulator's perspective, that a broker shouldn't be doing that. They should be targeting people that understand how trading works, and if they don't understand it, they should go through an education loop like what Ran was talking about, so that they actually understand what leverage is, they understand what a PIP is, and there's a qualification requirements in Australia now for that, and so So that's sort of where it's at, and I think that approach is spreading.
Well, after everything that have been said here, I don't know if anyone is going to do regulation, but if you do go decide, like Tal said, to go with a non-regulated way and to find your structure, and you will do it, and in the end, you will try to attack this type of region, China and Japan and Australia. You might have some success in Australia because of the language. You might have a few successes in Japan, but to get into these places, you will have to get the IBs, the local IBs, and they will look for some kind of regulation, some kind of confidence to hang on to. And then you will go back to these nice gents and you will get it, because this is something, in the end, you won't be able to make it here without it, as I see it.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on that. Everybody, when talking about penetrating the Asian market, everybody's talking about the importance of IBs, how central are IBs in Asia. So I wanted to ask, if you can share your experiences, why is that so?
Worked with IBs for the last 6 years or so. Having IBs, having relationship partners on the ground is very important. One of the aspects that we face is that you then tend to get an IB war. That means that one IB will go to one broker and look for a better rebate with another broker, and it then becomes very challenging. In some cases, they will use underhand tactics to get clients on board. So I think it's very important that you, just like you choose your partners correctly, it's very important that you choose the right IB partners to work with. We're talking about client acquisition. We've gone through the regulatory process. You have a company set up now for $5,000, $7,000. So you have a sitting company. The question is, for any business, how do you attract clients? How quickly can you attract clients? What is it going to cost you? Because this is really where it starts to get very, very challenging. And everybody wants to get the cheapest possible solution to get the client on board. But there's also two angles to that. It's getting the client, but also keeping the client. So again, having an IB relationship who is in regular contact with their client base, and you're providing support for that, is also going to be very, very important. One of the challenges that I faced, again, this is coming to different regions from Hong Kong, Singapore. I'll give you Singapore as an example. In Singapore, everybody was education hungry for about a 3-year period. Right now, that market is oversaturated. There is a seminar. It's probably the only place on the planet where you can find a seminar every single day of the week. So what I found the IBs had an issue with is everybody's targeting the same clients. So what can I do as an IB to bring these people onto my side? And education was a critical component, because you will find that from one brokerage to another, they're going to cut their spreads, they're going to offer account opening incentives. One broker will offer $100, another brokerage will offer $200 the next day. So there's no ceiling to that. What is, I think, really critical to any business is providing value and understanding the value of what the client wants. Not every client wants just online trading. They want to speak to somebody. They want to pick up the phone and says, hey, I don't know how to do this, or what do I do in this situation here? So the human interaction, the human relationship, whether it's through an IB or whether it's what we provide as a service through the companies, is going to be critical at all levels, now and in the future.
I think that's a good point, because from a regulatory perspective, a licensee in Australia and in similar jurisdictions has to monitor and supervise any third party that is an agent, that is their agent. In fact, they're responsible for the actions of their agent. And some of these introducing brokers can go to great lengths to onboard clients, and they're onboarding the wrong clients. They're onboarding clients that don't have the money to trade, and that's a social problem as well. But the regulators are putting more and more responsibility on the brokers to get the right people so they can have a long-term relationship, and it can work out for both parties.
I think it's not only keeping the client, it's keeping the IB. We need, the brokers are interested in keeping the IB as much as possible. Like you said, they're getting one model from this broker, another model from that broker. Why would they stay on a certain broker? They would stay because that broker is providing them a very unique service for this IB, hand-in-hand service in his language, of course. Someone who is catering him, someone who is giving him tools to generate traders that others doesn't. It's not only in the end the models and the regulation, because once we've tested, everybody is basically the same. Now you need the tools, you need the right tools, the right localization, and the right service for the IB, because sometimes you want to keep the IB more than you want to keep the clients.
Well, first, the importance or the way of working with IBs and affiliates is no different between Asia, Europe, and the US. It's the same thing. Maybe it's different types of IBs, different types of affiliates, but it's all around the world. Why do brokers do that? Because first of all, it's the easiest acquisition channel. You don't have to build anything on your own. You don't have to build the acquisition funnels on your own. You don't have to build the education tools on your own. The affiliates, they do that. So if you want to start your own brokerage and you have lots of things to do, then the last thing you can do is be your own affiliate or buy your own traffic and build your own acquisition funnels, which is a profession of its own. So this is why the affiliates are currently, especially in binary options, which is currently a market in growth, currently a market that is being created. Then the affiliate plays a major part, and the affiliates are actually stronger than the brokers at this particular point in time. If you take a look at past evolvement of similar industries like online gaming, poker, casino, then you'll see that it was the same thing when the industry started, and over time, when brokers learned, the big ones, they learned how to build their own channels, how to buy their own media, how to build their own online schools, so whatever it is. Then the affiliate became, then the power was pretty much equally spread. But currently we are in a situation where in binary options where the affiliates have the most power and can dictate the business terms. But it's going to change, I assure you.
It is starting, I think. We have a few clients like Option Rally that basically have a whole academic website that they're pushing. This is an amazing way to start the relationship with the clients. And it's going there, like you said, for sure.
I think that the other issue is that IBs also face a major challenge in that when they first acquire their client to onboard to a brokerage company, the clients are getting very, very savvy now. And at some point, that relationship between the IB and the client will become very distant because they will know where to get the best price. They will know where to get the best service. And so this is why we are finding that IBs are having to resort to different avenues. Again, localization, an understanding of localization is important because the IB wants to get as many clients as quickly as possible and obviously get the best rebates. In Malaysia, for example, I found that the IBs that used to introduce clients to a forex broker is actually now jumping ship and introducing people to money games, which some of these people feel that is very similar, but it's actually complete opposite ends. So it's really important that we as an industry understand the role of the IB, the role of the client, and to ensure from a legal perspective that the right messaging is getting through, so they are passing the right message to the client. Otherwise, the client then looks at the brokerage. If the client loses money, they lose it with the brokerage, not the IB. Okay, so again, there are various gray areas that needs to be looked at. These are going to become very challenging in the years to come. I foresee that.
Okay, I want to touch on a point that you raised previously, Sandy, which is the matter of localization and headquarters. Because we talk about Asia, but it's a huge market with a lot of individual countries. So I wanted to know, both on a retail perspective and on a B2B perspective, if you need to have local headquarters in every country, or is Hong Kong enough, or maybe mainland China?
The two major brokerage firms that I worked with were based in London. Coming to Asia from Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and in Hong Kong as well. When speaking to the client, not all clients, but most clients would ask, where are your offices? In many cases, high net worth clients would actually want to visit the office, visit to see a physical location, see the staff there, and see the operation. They wanted to see the size of the operation as well. Of course, it's very expensive to have a local office in every region. It's very challenging to do that because then you're talking about staffing costs, insurance costs, and everything else. The IB resolves that in some aspects, but I think it's important to have a office in the Asia region, whether it's going to be in Hong Kong or Singapore. It's going to be vital. I guess the problems going forward is this is a huge market. You know, it's not just China, it's Asia as a region. What are we going to do to build the relationships with the customers? Because we can't just do that by online marketing. I have found that the companies that I've worked with have spent millions of dollars through online marketing trying to win the customers, only for the customers just to reject them, saying, you don't have that local office, there's nobody for me to speak to with here. So I think starting out, maybe having a small local office with sort of minimal staff, having a point of contact is going to be quite important.
Well, I think that if you go for, I'm not sure if my colleague is referring to Forex or binary options, but when we're talking about products that are more appealing to the mass market, like binary options, and if the broker has their capability to make it an online acquisition tool, then the relevancy of having a local office where traders can go to, I think is going down. I don't think it's that important. It's maybe important for building the relationship with the local marketeers, the local IBs, local affiliates. It's easier to work that way and having the local essence, but it's not important in terms of being a broker where the traders can have an address to come to. I don't think it's relevant in terms when you market a product like binary options and you go online, then it's more important that you build your online acquisition funnels, your online machine properly. That will take you to the next level.
If we're already talking about an online machine or an acquisition funnel, when we're going to target this type of region, it's not enough to make, let's say when we're talking about a video, it's not enough to make a video which is all English inside, but the speaker is speaking Chinese. This is a bit abusing even for the Chinese. You need to make a whole new video for the Chinese with their own language, with their own texture inside, and to make it all over again. This is how you make a content for a new region.
Well, what I saw is very similar to what Eyal said. It all depends on which industry we're dealing in. So if we deal and if we speak about binary options, and in the same bin we'll put online casino, even social gaming, online scratch cards, online scratch machines, if the broker or the operator, if we're speaking now on gaming companies, appeal to the mass market in Asia, in the specific types of each jurisdiction, even without local presence, it can be a money-making machine, in huge numbers. If we're speaking about Forex, whether it's different models of Forex or gold or these type of business models, it's very important that there will be at least a contact or an office, local office in Asia, where we saw that the Hong Kong is some kind of a finance hub. But Hong Kong also doubles itself also as a finance hub, not only in the B2C Forex market, but also in the B2B. If you see many of the exhibitors here, that some of them are based in Cyprus, England, Israel, Tel Aviv. If they want to come to Asia, many of them open their own office in Hong Kong or here in Shenzhen, and they try to deal from this area to the other places in Asia. But if people market binary options, casinos, etc., normally the physical location in Asia is not required. Of course, you still need to obey the local rules and regulation. Make sure you do everything wisely.
And I think it also depends, as far as having a physical office, it depends on what aspect of the business you're talking about. So some of our clients, one of them is listed quite large, and they don't have any IBs. There's another client that's globally quite large, and in Australia, I don't think they have more than 3 or 4 IBs. They've got a really big brand, and that's what attracts people. So that's from a brand perspective. You don't need IBs if you've built a good brand. I think it's a lot harder if you're starting from scratch. So that's from a brand perspective. From a regulatory perspective, you just have to have a physical presence in Australia if you wanted to come through Australia. I think that's the same now in New Zealand. I think it's the same in Cyprus and maybe Israel.
Israel will start in a few months.
In a few months, 4 months, yeah.
Yeah. It's coming.
It's coming.
already enacted.
All the time.
It's coming for 10 years now.
Yeah.
So
it's
still coming.
No, it's really coming. Yeah.
So from a brand perspective, you don't need IBs physically on the ground everywhere necessarily. From a regulatory perspective, in some jurisdictions you do. From an operational perspective, I think, going back to mainland China, most brokers like to have some sort of banking facilities in Hong Kong because of the way money flows in and out of various Asian countries. And so I think the physical location serves different purposes. So there's not a really straightforward answer.
I'll add to that, and my fellow colleagues are absolutely right, you need to understand what the product is. If it's going to be a binary, then of course you will not need a physical office. But if you're talking traditional products, whether it's local equities, currencies, commodities, then yes, the added benefit of having that local office is important. But let's also not forget the demographics of the client itself. How old is that client? What is the age of the person who is trading binaries versus the age of trading, say, local equities and some of the other markets there as well? So the marketing, the pitch will be very different to that client base as well, and obviously meeting their demands.
And we don't have a marketing guy here, but of course everybody has to do marketing. So is there anything specific that you would do in Asia? For example, we see a lot of European brokers teaming up with football teams. So how would you see the best option to build a brand in Asia?
Marketing is a challenge. We all are trying to find innovative ways of getting a message across, or let's say making an attractive offer for somebody to read an advert or pay attention to something. What I found more than anywhere else in the world is coming to Asia, most people are on their phones. They're constantly pushing buttons on that phone. So we took that as a lesson. We started generating content which was mobile friendly. We started creating content which was very, very short in terms of time span, because people will flip from one thing to another to another. So you have to create something which is engaging. So what do you create that is engaging? You take your lessons from Hollywood. 1/3 of the budget of a movie is actually spent on the trailer, because that trailer is going to be giving you the success of the movie itself, because it wants to get the audiences into the theater or at least to buy the DVD. So a marketing tactic that you could use in this industry is telling story. Not a story about, there's a lot of brokerage companies out there. I mean, I walk around here and we're the best brokerage. We offer the best solution. And you walk 5 meters down the path, there's another company offering the same logos. Again, I'll go back to that point that you have to build value, and you build value by creating a story which the client can then follow onto a journey. Across all industries, that has worked wonders, back from the 1900s to this present day. It's building a story, building a value, so that the client can follow the journey and eventually come knocking on your door.
Well, I think in the end, this industry is all about risk lovers. We're searching for risk lover traders. And the best way to get them is to build some type of confidence in their mind in terms of trading, on trading. To build the confidence, as I see it, we do it through education. We see that brokers that wants to go into China is basically taking and creating, like Randy said, trailers, very specific content for Chinese, for Japanese in their own language that they don't have. If you go to these places and if you go to, let's say, China, you can see a lot of written content. You won't see lots of videos. So I think this is where, this is the way the market is going. It's going to be a lot more interactive, a lot more on demand, because you all know there's lots of offline seminars, just like Randy says in Singapore, every day there's one. But how many seminars can you do? How many people can you go in and teach in a seminar? In the end, we want to open the market, and this is why we need on-demand videos to be prepared for our traders to learn anywhere, anytime, to get this confidence that we're looking for, and then they will become a member in our broker. This is one of the ways that I feel right to build the confidence of the trader. It doesn't matter where he is, but build the confidence on of your services by teaching him and giving him prime education.
Well, there's two ways to build your brand. One is to enforce different types of acquisition tactics, which is a tactic because it's good while you're doing it, while you're paying the affiliate, while you're paying the IB, while you're doing the online school, while you're doing whatever you do. But it's very specific to the action that you take. But once you stop taking it, then it's pretty much done. Then the effect will disappear in few weeks, few months. As opposed to building a brand, okay? And building a brand, of course, is a long and very expensive task. But if it's successful, then you'll have a huge advantage over others. I can relate. I mean, I can tell you some stories about binary options, but from my experience, not a lot of binary options brokers so far. It's still a young industry, but have managed to build a strong brand globally. The only one that I know that managed to do it effectively is 24 Option, but they of course spend a lot of money to do that. But at the end, it's of course. It gives you a huge advantage, but it takes a lot of time and a lot of money, and you have to do it professionally. For example, some very interesting example that they have taken lately is sponsoring a football club that is a European football club, Juventus in Italy, that is very popular in Japan, okay? So this is a very smart move. Because the Japanese people that they're crazy about Italian football, specifically Juventus, so it was a smart move from from their side too, because Japan for them is a primary market. I can give you other examples, but this is I think this is a classic one.
Also, marketing, we must not forget social media, the powerful innovation of social media. So using things like YouTube or video channels and Twitter and so forth. These can help actually bring down costs, and who else is better to talk about your brand than a loyal customer? So again, it's building loyalty, it's using those channels to increase your awareness and obviously bring the costs down through those channels.
There is a corresponding risk with the social media channels, just being the killjoy lawyer here, is the wider you spread your message, or the more you empower your introducing brokers to use social media, the harder it is to monitor what they say. And I know there's been a few situations where I've been on Facebook, and because Facebook and Google realise that I look at these FX companies, they're always trying to promote them to me. And I've seen some ads where in 2 instances I saw the ad, I picked up the phone, I knew the director, wasn't a client of ours, I called him and he had it shut down in 24 hours because it was shocking how misleading it was. And if ASIC, being a regulator with limited resources, a lot of desktop surveillance, scanning websites, scanning social media, it's one of the easiest ways they can pick up a broker. And so the challenge for the broker is if they're using introducers that are going wide in social media, broker has to take responsibility for monitoring what they're actually saying. So that's the challenge.
This is why, as I said, you've got to be very careful with that grey line. Are you as a company advertising in social media, or is the customer themselves talking about your company in the social media arena? One very interesting aspect that I did, this is in the UK, is I took a challenge, and I took ordinary people and I showed them a very, very simple system, and I said, using this system, let's see if you can actually make some money out of the system. So we're not advising you, you are simply learning the tools, and if after 3 months you're successful, we will do another follow-up trip into Spain. And a large portion of those people managed to come along, they came to Spain. That video in itself, which I didn't take, one of the members had actually filmed herself getting on the plane, meeting other people, coming for the 2-day event, became viral. And the video in itself had brought in 370 odd people for the next event. So it wasn't me marketing anything, it was the customer talking to other customers and showing that this is interesting, this is working, and it was their story, it was their journey. So we have to become innovative and creative, obviously keeping online with the law side, obviously.
Very, very much agreed. I think if you would try to do it straight on Facebook, it would cost you 10 times, and they would stop you probably 10 times also. But when you do it like that, when you give a tool which is going to be like that viral and social, then you do the job, it does the job itself. So I think it was a very good example.
Okay, I think we have some time for questions. Who has a question? Okay, so let's wrap up what we learned. Or maybe one last question, which is about instruments, because you know, there's a perception, at least in Asia, people like to trade gold more. I wanted to know if that's something that you see, or is that just a perception in the industry?
It's not a perception, it's real. People in Asia won't like to admit it, but they like to gamble. They like gold. They don't like, you know, when they come to us and they want to do binary options, they say, please, Tal, just don't make it be considered as gambling, because for us, gambling is like the biggest no-no. But at the end of the day, that's what the players like. They like to gamble. So, you know, we try to find a creative solution or a legal opinion and find, because it's a very thin line here, and everybody wants to work according to the law. So, yes, it's very specific to Asia, and you can see specifications, and you can see it, and it's a challenge. And I see that this is the third year that we have here IFX Expo in Asia. 2 years it was in Macau, now in Hong Kong, and we see more and more people, and I think we see that people want to learn more and more how to tackle this market.
Well, binary option-wise, I can tell you that in Japan, the biggest market is yen US or yen euro. By far, maybe 80 or 90% of the volume. In China, of course, there is, you know, traditionally there is the precious metals trading, so silver and gold is having more volume. But still, trading major currencies is the leading product, because in binary options it's about volume, and the more volatile the product is, the more volatile the underlying asset is, the more attractive it will be to traders, because traders are looking for patterns or for spikes or for certain behavior of their underlying asset, and the more interesting it is, the more volume it has in trading, then of course the traders will find more interest in it. So mainly it's mainly currency. It's mainly leading currencies like euro, US dollar, and of course specifically in Japan, Japanese yen.
Yeah, well, definitely. As I said before, I think it's a matter of confidence. People are confident to trade in their own currency, Australian in their Aussie, and then yen in their yen, so Japanese on their yen. So I think it's a matter, like Eyal said, they want to trade in something they know, probably the same also in stocks. And metals is like what Tal said, it's pure speculation.
And I think we've seen a bit of a rise in physical gold as well. Jeremy from Bullion Capital could testify to that. It's just the Asian market does like gold, and the physical aspect is more of an investment aspect than a trading aspect, and so I think they complement each other. So we're seeing more of that.
I think gold, people tend to view it, as you just said, is more of an investment. One of the dangers of that is if they start to see the price of gold going down, they tend to hold on to a losing position, which I've seen a lot of people do. I think media plays an important role, whether it's a currency pair or whether it's a commodity or a particular stock. People go for excitement. What's moving now? Where am I going to make money fast? They don't care if it's called gold, silver, or platinum, or a currency pair. They just want to make money. And I think it's just whatever the hot topic of the month is in the media, they'll tend to go on that.
Okay, we have time for another question. So I wanted to ask about HR, about basically employees. Assuming you're attempting to penetrate the Chinese market and you need Chinese employees, where would you be based? Would you look for employees to bring Chinese employees to Cyprus, for example, or would you look to set up in Hong Kong, or an office on the mainland, or even Australia that has a large Asian community?
Sometimes you can do something that you didn't mention now, but I have a client targeting the Chinese audience. He sits in the United States with Americans speaking Chinese, which is a nice hybrid because the call center sits in the US, the company sits in Europe, and the audience is in mainland China. So you can do a mixture between both. Now, in several jurisdictions, you can give a very low minimum wage and make most of the salary based on percentages. And this can be very good to incentivize the employees. You can sometimes get 50, 100 employees because it's quite cheap. You only need to pay for them for the desk and for the call center, and a very small minimum wage. And the remainder is only per actual FTDs, first-time deposits, and so on. But the other places where it's the employment standards are much higher, such as United Kingdom. So there it shifts completely different.
The way I see it, a good broker needs to have 3 different departments or divisions or whatever it is. One is the marketing, the other one is sales, call center, sales, and the third one is operations. In terms of marketing, marketing you need to have unlike maybe operational or sales where you look for cost effectiveness. In marketing, you have to have the best because this is where it all starts. So if you want to work in China or in Japan, you need to have Chinese marketeers. So you can't really expect to be a good broker or a good marketeer in China if you work from Cyprus and you just take what you have in terms of Chinese people living in Cyprus. So basically, a good broker needs to have offices in probably several locations. In some locations, operational. Probably they will go for price, and wherever it's more effective in terms of price, they will open it over there. But in terms of marketing and sometimes sales also, because sales in Forex and also binary options, you need to have the right ingredients to be aggressive in sales, and you can't if you want to have Japanese language, if you want to have Chinese language, then you can't not do it anywhere. You have to find the right location to get people that can speak the language better. For example, in China, I know from experience that if you try to do it in the Philippines, which is considered a low-cost region, then you cannot really get quality Chinese speakers that speak the Chinese language at a good enough level so that the traders respect them. So there are issues here. So you might want to go to Hong Kong or mainland China.
I think, as Eyal said, maybe a few years back it would be possible to run an office from Cyprus, to have a very good IB manager, to have her flying here or him fly here to meet his IB every month and every once in a while, and to keep these relations, to keep customer service in Chinese in Europe, and to work like that. And as Eyal said, also to bring marketeers which are specializing in China. But I think nowadays, with this type of competition we have today, without a local presence, it's going to be really hard. Put it where it's for the gentlemen.
Could I just add one final comment? Yeah, just so if anybody does want legal advice in a whole bunch of Asian countries, I'm crowdfunding it from different lawyers. So it's not us making money. It's just spreading the cost amongst as many brokers as we can. The countries are Japan, Hong Kong, mainland China, Indonesia, Singapore, New Zealand, and Canada, which is obviously a bit out of Asia. But if anybody's interested in that, just come and talk to me, and I can tell you what the quotes we've received from those lawyers are. And, yeah.
Great. So we've learned a lot about the Asian market, but obviously there's so much more. So everybody, if you have any more questions, please talk later. And thank you very much for the panel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.